So in this video, we will look at the differences between an LLP, a limited liability partnership, and private limited company in Singapore. So let's start. The first point is about requirements for the registration of respective entities. So to register an LLP, you need minimum 2 partners. There should be one manager minimum and there should be a registered address. There is no restriction on the maximum number of LLP partners, and one of the requirements is that the manager must be locally resident in Singapore. When you want to establish a private limited company, you need a minimum one shareholder, minimum one locally resident director, minimum one company secretary, and a registered address. There is a limit of 20 shareholders for a small private limited company and 50 for non-exempt private limited company. If the number of shareholders is going beyond 50, then it needs to be created as a public limited company. Speaking of the legal status, an LLP is an independent legal person identified under a law. So an LLP can buy or own property in its name. It can sue or can be sued. It can do all those activities which a typical individual person will be able to do in his business. So the things like signing a contract on own name, taking loans, everything can be done under LLP name. And the same principle applies for private limited company also. Now coming to the next point, what is the liability of the persons involved in LLP versus PTA Limited? So in case of LLP, the liability of the partners and managers is limited. But in case if there is any wrongdoing by the partners, then the liability of that partner can be unlimited. In case of a private limited company, the liability of shareholders and directors of the company is always limited. Now let's speak about the cost. So to register an LLP, we need to pay 15 Singapore dollars for name registration, 100 Singapore dollars for registration of the LLP itself, and then every year we need to pay 30 Singapore dollars as an annual fee for the LLP. In case of a private limited company, we need to pay 15 Singapore dollars for name registration, 300 Singapore dollars for registration of the company itself, and 60 Singapore dollars annually at the time of annual return filing. Coming to the compliance requirement, the compliance that is required for LLP is quite simple. Every year you need to file an annual solvency declaration, and that's what all is needed. In case of private limited company, the compliance is bit more. You need to appoint a company secretary within 6 months of the incorporation of the company. If the company is subject to audit, then you need to appoint the auditor within 3 months from the date of incorporation. Every year, an annual general meeting is required of the shareholders of the company. Then after the AGM, you are required to file annual return, and also the C form or form CS for the tax purpose needs to be filed. So as you can see here, the compliance for private limited company is significantly more than that of LLP. Coming to the tax liabilities, profit of the LLP is taxed in the hands of the partner at individual rate. As a result of this, no tax filing is required for the LLP. Whereas in case of a private limited company, profit of the company is taxed at the corporate rate, which is 17%, and there can be some exemptions for new startup companies. And the dividend that is distributed to the shareholders after tax is charged on the corporate profit is not taxable again in the hands of shareholders. So coming to the last slide, if we consider the flexibility, LLP has some limitations. LLP first of all presumes equal ownership between the partners. So if there are 3 partners, each partner will be owning 33% of the LLP. The second problem is that there is no separation of ownership and management. Normally it is presumed that partners of the LLP are actively involved in the management and affairs of the LLP. Whereas in case of a private limited company, there is a full flexibility. You can have ownership of the company based on the number of shares owned by individual person, and also there is a separation of ownership and management where ownership is with the shareholders and the management is with the directors or the board of directors. So as a summary, LLP is more suitable for small to medium businesses and it is generally used by professionals like doctors, lawyers or chartered accountants in their practice. Whereas a private limited company is suitable for all the businesses which can be of varying complexity and varying sizes. It can be used by a person who is running a small business and it can also be used by a person who is running a large enterprise.
Thank you for watching this video. This video was brought to you by Epica Consulting Singapore. Subscribe to our channel today to get notified when new videos are posted.